Israel just destroyed the building where Iran was choosing its next supreme leader. The assembly of experts was meeting. The votes were being counted and then the strike hit. It doesn't look like if anyone survived or not. Just take a look at this aftermath video we had. This was the building where Iran's future was being decided and now it's rubble. This is Israel going all in on regime change. They're not just eliminating the current leadership, they're preventing anyone from replacing them. Maybe Israel had intelligence about who was being chosen, or maybe they just wanted to stop the process entirely. Either way, this does tell you how deep Israeli intelligence goes. Now in a second we'll go over the details of how CIA and Mossad tracked Khamenei before he was killed, because some of these new details are truly shocking. But before we do that, let me explain what this assembly of experts is, because understanding this makes the strike even more significant. You see, Iran's supreme leader is chosen by this assembly of experts, which is a group of clerics who are elected by popular vote every 8 years. But here's the catch: not everyone can run in these elections. Only candidates approved by the current supreme leader can appear on the ballot. So Khamenei himself approved everyone that's in that assembly. They ran and Iranians voted, then the winner got the power to choose Khamenei's successor. This process has only been tested once before, in 1989, when the founder of the Islamic Republic, Khomeini, died. Back then, the assembly elected Khamenei as the new supreme leader within the first 48 hours. They moved very fast, the process was smooth, and there were no complications that I know of. But that was peacetime. Khamenei died of natural causes. There was no chaos like we're seeing inside Iran right now. This time is completely different. Khamenei was killed in an airstrike and 40 top officials died with him. The entire leadership structure is in chaos and IRGC is trying to take advantage of it. We have seen reports that IRGC was pushing their candidate to take over as supreme leader because they want to make sure the military has the maximum power possible in the next regime. So maybe this is why the assembly was hit, because we know that assembly had already casted their votes for the new supreme leader. They were actually counting them when the building was hit. So maybe, and I'm just speculating, I don't have any proof here, maybe Israel figured out who was gonna win and they didn't like the next guy, so they took out the entire process. Now the whole process has to start over if enough people are alive. But if enough people in this assembly of experts are not alive, that creates a huge problem. Let me show you what I mean. You see, according to the Islamic Republic's constitution, the assembly of experts is crucial in picking the new supreme leader. And this assembly needs to have at least 59 members in order to have a quorum so they can convene and make their decision, or I guess cast their votes to basically elect the new supreme leader. If there are less than 59 ayatollahs on the assembly, then there is no quorum and that means they cannot vote on a new supreme leader. So if enough people died in this strike, that means there needs to be a new popular election, but that election cannot take place because all the members need to be vetted by the supreme leader, who's of course not alive anymore. So it does create like a constitutional crisis, but I doubt that's gonna have a huge problem in the Islamic Republic, especially at a time of war. I'm sure they'll figure out a way to subvert the constitution. Now, since we are talking about Ali Khamenei, let me show you how CIA and Mossad actually work together to track him, because the new details are truly shocking. According to the Financial Times, Israel had access to traffic cameras in Tehran for over a year. So that means they had access to traffic cameras before the 12-day war, and that access was never taken away even after that war. That's just shocking. But on top of that, one camera was especially valuable. This camera showed where bodyguards of high-ranking officials parked their cars near Khamenei's residence. That means every time a senior official visited Khamenei, their bodyguards parked their car in that same area, and this meant Israel could always figure out which official was actually present in that compound. And on top of that, once Israel knew the cars, they could track the same car across the city of Tehran and build like a routine for these bodyguards, and in return build a routine for the person they were protecting. In the intelligence field, this was called building a pattern of life, which is very useful if you want to figure out where someone's going to be when you're trying to take them out. Now, of course, this is shocking, and it's so shocking that it's hard to believe that they had this access for over a year and the Islamic regime couldn't figure it out. But it's important to point out that this was just one of hundreds of data points that Israel was using to plan the strike. But there was one problem. Israelis knew from the 12-day war that once fighting starts, Khamenei would disappear into one of his several bunkers across Tehran. And these bunkers were essentially impenetrable with the bombs Israel had. That means if Khamenei went underground, he would be untouchable. That's why the timing of the initial attack was everything. They had to catch him before he knew war was starting. And they had to catch him above ground where he could be taken out. Well, this is where we need to talk about Israeli military doctrine. According to this doctrine, before a strike is carried out, it requires confirmation from two different agents who can confirm that the target is actually in the location where the strike is supposed to take place. Unfortunately for Israel, though, they only had one source confirming that Khamenei would be at this meeting Friday morning. They needed a second one before they can carry out this strike. This is where CIA comes in. CIA had been tracking Khamenei for a very long time too. And on top of that, CIA had something that Israel didn't. A human source on the ground in Iran that could confirm where Khamenei would be at this morning. Well, guess what? CIA got this confirmation, they passed it along to Israelis, and then the operation was started. Now, just a side note, I don't exactly know how high up this source was, because we do know that Israel was able to penetrate very high up in the Islamic regime. And there's a chance that this source is very high up right now in the regime that's fighting a war with US. But nonetheless, that's not something we need to worry about, but I'm sure the Islamic Republic is certainly looking for that source right now. But let's get back to our story. Once the intelligence was confirmed, everything moved very fast. 2 hours before the 9:30 a.m. meeting, Israeli jets took off from Israel. As Iranian officials began arriving at the compound, Israel could see the bodyguards' cars in the traffic cameras that they had access to. This is when Israel implemented another safeguard. Israel basically jammed all the phones in the compound. That means the phones appeared busy whenever someone would try to call it. No calls could come through, and that meant the bodyguards had no way to receive warnings ahead of time that jets had entered Iranian airspace. And that means they had no reason to take all these officials who were meeting to a bunker. Then the meeting started. Israeli jets got there roughly 10 minutes after the meeting started and dropped nearly 30 precision-guided munition on the complex. These bombs left nothing to chance. Khamenei, his son, and dozens of senior Iranian officials died in that strike. Since then, the strikes haven't really stopped. Israel has been systematically eliminating the regime's leadership structure. Before we go over that though, just a quick request to hit the subscribe and like button down below. It really does help us out in the algorithm, especially when covering topics like war, which YouTube is not a fan of. Now, let's go over everyone who Israel has assassinated, because they made this information public. Here's the IDF post confirming everyone that they have killed in what they call axis of terror. At the top, we have the Supreme Leader, then the Chief of Staff, then the IRGC Commander, then the Central Intelligence Commander, IRGC Air Force Commander, Syrian Quds Force Commander, Hezbollah Leader, Hamas Leader, and many more. Most of the top of the regime is gone, and the strikes continue even now. Just this morning, an IRGC building in Tehran was hit. The explosion was so powerful that it scattered top secret documents across the city. Here's the clip of the aftermath of that explosion. Then we also had the Iranian Ministry of Defense get struck this morning. Here's that clip. Then we also had reports about Iranian parliament building getting striked yesterday. This report actually came from the Iranian state media themselves. These strikes tell us one thing. The Iranian buildings, at least the buildings that are known to the world, are not safe anymore. And that's why we are seeing the regime do something desperate and telling. Reports are emerging that IRGC and besieged forces are abandoning their headquarters and relocating to schools, mosques, and hospitals. Why? Well, what we just talked about, because every known military location is getting hit. So they're hiding behind civilians. And we can see this on video. Just this morning, the Iranian foreign minister's spokesperson held a press conference. Look at that background on your screen. That's a classroom, a school. The state is now operating out of elementary schools because their buildings are getting destroyed. And that's what they're willing to show on camera. Imagine what they are not willing to show. This is why I actually believe the reports that say that military forces and Basij's forces are moving into schools and operating out of there using the schools as headquarters. The regime that ruled Iran for 46 years is getting desperate, and based on what we are learning, it seems they have nowhere else to hide. So be sure to hit the subscribe button down below to catch up with what happens next. My name is Sam, and I'll see you guys in the next one.